The rash first appeared on a rainy Tuesday morning. A faint, reddish patch on our 6-month-old daughter Ava's stomach, barely bigger than a coin. At first, my wife Megan thought it was just irritation from the new laundry detergent we'd started using. I remember her holding Ava up, squinting at the spot as the baby gurgled happily, totally unfazed. "She's not scratching. She's not crying. It's probably nothing," Megan said, brushing it off with a tired smile. We were first-time parents, and everything felt like a guessing game. Google searches, mom blogs, group chats with other new parents. It was a constant swirl of conflicting advice and worst-case scenarios. But this, it didn't feel serious. Ava was eating fine, smiling, sleeping through the night. Well, most nights. The little rash didn't look angry or inflamed. It wasn't spreading. So, we chalked it up to sensitive skin and went on with our lives. That night, we cuddled on the couch watching reruns of The Office while Ava dozed off in her bassinet. Megan kept checking her phone, searching for baby rash images and comparing them to what we saw. I glanced over and rolled my eyes. "Babe, stop doom scrolling. You're going to convince yourself it's smallpox or something." She chuckled and finally put the phone down. "I know. I don't want to miss something. It's wild how your instincts whisper things to you before your brain can catch up." The next morning, the rash had spread. Not a lot, but enough to make both of us stop in our tracks. It had crept across her lower belly and started dotting her upper thighs. Still, Ava wasn't in pain.
No fever, no fusines.
Just these harmless-looking red blotches. We called her pediatrician, who said it was likely a common viral rash, harmless and self-resolving. Keep her hydrated, monitor her, let us know if anything changes. And so we watched. For 2 days, Megan kept a detailed log of every new spot that appeared. She took photos, timestamped them, and compared their sizes. She noticed that the color was deepening, shifting from a pinkish hue to a darker red. Some started forming tiny blisters. That's when the doubt crept in. "Do you think it could be an allergy?" Megan asked one night, pacing the living room while Ava slept in her arms. "What if it's something in her formula? Or the new wipes we got?" "I mean, maybe," I said, "but she's not acting sick. If she had a reaction, wouldn't she be miserable?" Megan sighed. "I don't know. It just doesn't feel right." That was the turning point. That feeling. Not panic, not alarm, just a quiet unease, like something was shifting beneath the surface, too subtle to name. By the 5th day, Ava developed a fever. It spiked quickly, 102.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Her soft baby skin felt like a furnace. Her cries were no longer fussy or hungry. They were sharp, frantic, as if she were trying to tell us something her tiny voice couldn't articulate. Megan didn't wait. She bundled Ava up and told me, "We're going to the ER. Now." I drove like a madman through the evening traffic, hands gripping the wheel so tight they hurt. Megan sat in the back, whispering to Ava, trying to soothe her cries. I glanced at them through the rearview mirror and saw fear in my wife's eyes that I'd never seen before. That's when I realized this wasn't just a rash. Something was very wrong. The emergency room was packed, fluorescent lights casting a cold glare over exhausted faces. Parents held feverish toddlers, elderly patients clutched tissues, and somewhere a man coughed endlessly into his elbow. We stood at the reception desk, Megan barely holding back tears as she explained Ava's symptoms. "She has a rash that's spreading. She's burning up. She's never had a fever like this. Please, we just need someone to look at her." The nurse nodded calmly but moved with urgency, glancing at Ava and immediately tagging her chart with a red sticker. "Triage right away. Follow me." They took us past the crowded waiting room into a small exam area. The nurse checked her vitals, heart rate fast, breathing shallow, fever now 103 degrees Fahrenheit. Ava whimpered, her tiny hands curling into fists. Megan held her close, forehead pressed to hers, whispering soft reassurances. I stood by uselessly, heart thudding against my ribs. Have you noticed any changes in her eating?
Wet diapers.
Vomiting? The nurse asked. She's been eating a little less, Megan said, but she hasn't thrown up, and her diapers have been light, less wet. The nurse gave a slight nod and left the room. Minutes later, a young ER doctor entered, flipping through a tablet. He was kind but serious. He examined Ava's rash, now visibly spreading up her back and arms. Some of the spots had darkened, almost purplish. He looked at us and said, "We need to run some blood work and cultures right away." "What do you think it is?" I asked, voice cracking. "I don't want to speculate yet," he said, "but we need to rule out a few things, including meningococcemia and sepsis. We're going to move fast." I had never heard those words before. Megan had. Her face drained of color. "Meningococcemia? That's a blood infection, right?" she asked. The doctor nodded. "It can start as a rash and fever just like this. It's rare, but with babies we don't take chances. The symptoms can escalate very quickly." They placed N4 in Ava's tiny arm, wrapped it gently, and drew blood. The nurse gave her fluids and started broad-spectrum antibiotics, just in case. Megan sat frozen, eyes locked on Ava, lips moving in silent prayer. "She was fine a week ago," she whispered. "She was laughing yesterday. How does it get this bad? This fast?" I didn't have an answer. The helplessness clawed at me. The results trickled in over the next few hours. Ava's white blood cell count was alarmingly low. Her blood pressure had dropped. The rash was now raised and angry-looking, bleeding into her skin like bruises. The ER doctor returned, his face more serious than before. "We're transferring her to the pediatric intensive care unit. Her vitals are unstable. We believe this may be meningococcemia, an aggressive form of bacterial infection in the blood. It spreads fast, and it can shut down organs if not treated immediately." I felt the floor tilt. "Is she going to be okay?" Megan asked, her voice small and trembling. The doctor paused. "She's in the best place she can be right now. We're doing everything we can." They wheeled Ava away in a clear bassinet with monitors trailing behind her. Megan and I followed, barely breathing. The halls blurred. The sounds faded. All that existed in that moment was the image of our baby. Our beautiful, curious, cooing little girl, now pale, sweaty, and covered in a terrifying rash. We sat in the PICU waiting room, where time crawled. A nurse checked in every so often with updates. "She's stable for now. She's responding to fluids. We've sent her labs to infectious disease specialists." Eventually, the head pediatrician came in and knelt beside us. She looked exhausted, but kind. "It is meningococcemia," she said quietly. "We caught it early enough to start treatment, but the next 48 hours are critical. This bacteria attacks fast. We need to monitor for complications, organ failure, clotting disorders, neurological issues." Megan gasped. I just stared. "But it was just a rash," I said. "She wasn't even sick." The doctor nodded solemnly. "That's how it starts. A rash, a fever. Then everything changes." The pediatric ICU was a cold, humming chamber of machines and beeping monitors. Ava lay under warming lights, her small body dwarfed by the nest of wires and tubes surrounding her. Her rash had turned into something darker, crueler. Angry purple blotches that bled into one another across her skin. The doctor explained that these were signs of purpura fulminans, a life-threatening complication of meningococcemia that I had to Google it. I wish I hadn't. Every moment felt like a gamble, like our baby girl was walking a tightrope, and we could only stand below, unable to catch her if she fell. Megan stayed by her side, gripping her tiny hand. She spoke to her constantly, murmuring childhood lullabies, reciting stories, even telling Ava about the swing set we were going to buy her once this was all over. I sat by the window and stared out into the dark, not really seeing anything at all. One of the nurses, Samantha, a calm and steady presence, approached with a clipboard. "We need your consent," she said gently. There's a risk of clotting, and her extremities aren't getting good circulation. We're bringing in a vascular specialist to evaluate. Sometimes with this kind of infection, parts of the body, fingers, toes, can be at risk. Megan's eyes widened. Are you saying she might lose parts of her body? Samantha nodded slowly. We hope not. We're trying everything we can. But it's a possibility. That night I didn't sleep. Neither did Megan. We took turns holding Ava's hand, humming to her through oxygen tubes and heart monitors. She drifted in and out, her fever rising and falling like waves in a storm. Once, just before dawn, she opened her eyes briefly and tried to smile at us. That moment shattered me. The next morning brought a sliver of hope. The fever broke. The rash stopped spreading. Her heart rate stabilized, and the doctors looked cautiously optimistic. We're not out of the woods, the pediatrician warned. But this is the response we hoped for. Still, there were consequences. Ava's right foot, her tiny, perfect foot, wasn't regaining color. It remained dark, cold. They performed a Doppler ultrasound and confirmed poor blood flow. There were talks of blood thinners, of hyperbaric oxygen, of surgery. I looked at Megan, and she looked back at me, both of us too afraid to ask the real question out loud. Will our baby ever walk? By the end of the second day in PICU, Ava's labs showed slow improvement. She opened her eyes longer. She whimpered instead of crying. Her breathing became more stable, and they began weaning her off oxygen support. But her foot. The vascular surgeon came in that evening. Dr. Harris, bald, kind eyes, father of 3. He spoke in clear, measured tones. We're going to monitor her for 24 more hours. The tissue may recover. But if it doesn't, we'll have to make a very difficult decision. Megan broke down. I held her, barely holding myself together. How did this happen? She sobbed. We thought it was just a rash. Dr. Harris sighed. Meningococcus is rare, but it moves fast, especially in infants. The early symptoms are nonspecific. That's what makes it so dangerous. He paused, then added, You did the right thing. You brought her in at the right time. You may have saved her life. That night, while Megan finally managed a short nap on a fold-out cot beside Ava's bed, I sat beside my daughter and whispered, You're strong. You're a fighter. You're gonna grow up and chase butterflies and stomp through puddles. I swear. I'll carry you through every storm. It wasn't just a rash. It was the beginning of a nightmare. And now, maybe, the beginning of our fight back to hope. 24 hours later, the verdict came in. Ava's foot hadn't recovered. The tissue damage was too extensive, too far gone. Despite all the interventions, the medications, the oxygen therapy, the vascular massage, her right foot from the midsole down was blackened with necrosis. There was no longer blood flow, no sensation. It had to be removed. We'll save as much as we can, Dr. Harris said gently. But we're looking at a partial foot amputation. Megan stared at him like he had just shattered our entire future with a single sentence. I felt numb, like my body had decided it couldn't absorb any more pain. But she's just a baby? Megan whispered, holding Ava tightly, as if she could protect her from the truth. She hasn't even taken her first step. I know, Dr. Harris said, and she still will, just in a different way. Children adapt more easily than adults. She'll learn fast. There are amazing prosthetics these days. She'll run and play like other kids, you'll see. That didn't make it easier to hear. The surgery was scheduled for the next morning. Megan and I didn't sleep. We took turns writing letters to Ava for when she was older, telling her how strong she was, how brave, how proud we were. We sat in silence, then broke into tears. We clung to each other like the room was on fire and we were the only safe ground left. When the nurse came in at dawn, Ava was resting peacefully. The antibiotics had done their work, and the infection was under control. Her vitals were stable, but the price it had extracted, swift, ruthless, was permanent. The surgery took just under 2 hours. We sat in the waiting room, hands clasped, trying to hold each other up. She won't remember this, will she? Megan asked, voice cracking. No, I said, but we will. Every second of it. The moment we were allowed back into her room, I rushed to her side. Her leg was carefully bandaged, elevated. Her face looked calm, as if she were finally resting after weeks of battle. I kissed her forehead, tears falling onto her cheeks. Megan stood beside us, hand over her mouth. She's okay, I said, not even sure who I was trying to convince. She's here. That's what matters. Later that evening, a counselor stopped by. Her name was Lila, warm, grounded, the kind of person who could meet you in your darkest moment without flinching. She talked to us about grief, about trauma, about the long road ahead. Parents grieve in different ways, she said, not just for what happened, but for what they imagined would happen. You're allowed to mourn the life you pictured. That doesn't make you ungrateful. We both cried then, for the little footprints that would never form, for the shoes we'd already bought, for the innocence that felt ripped from all three of us in just 1 week. But Ava, she healed faster than we expected. Babies are miracles that way. By the end of the week, she was babbling again, laughing in short bursts. Her cheeks regained color. She reached for toys, for Megan's hair, for my beard like she used to. The nurses took turns visiting her, calling her the little warrior. When the prosthetic specialist came in a few days later, he brought a small demo foot, soft, lightweight, designed for crawling and eventually walking. He showed us the different types she could use as she grew. She'll hit all her milestones, he said confidently. She'll just do it her way. Megan held Ava in her arms and whispered, "You already are." We brought Ava home 2 weeks after the surgery. The nursery looked almost exactly the same, warm gray walls, the mobile with floating clouds, a framed quote that said, "You are our sunshine." But we weren't the same. None of us were. We carried something invisible with us now. An awareness, a scar in the shape of gratitude and grief. We tried to get back to routine. Diaper changes, bottles, lullabies. But there were new routines too. Cleaning the surgical site, checking for signs of infection, fitting Ava for her first prosthetic sock. Every day brought a mixture of joy and quiet mourning. Megan had moments where she couldn't stop crying. Once, she saw a baby shoe commercial and broke down on the kitchen floor. I found her there, holding one of Ava's unused shoes, like it was evidence of a life we'd lost. I didn't say anything. I just sat with her. Sometimes the only thing you can do is not look away. But there were beautiful moments, too. More than we expected. Ava's resilience stunned us. 2 months after coming home, she began crawling again, dragging her right leg at first, then learning how to pivot and pull herself forward. The prosthetist adjusted her foot, giving her more balance and grip. By 10 months, she was standing with help, bouncing with laughter every time she managed to hold onto something without falling. "She's defiant," Megan said one day, watching her knock over a basket of toys just for the thrill of it. "She gets that from you?" I said, smiling. We joined an online support group for parents of children with limb differences. We met families from the US, Canada, the UK, and Australia, each with their own battle stories. Some had lost limbs to car accidents, others to congenital conditions or infections like Ava's. We shared photos, progress updates, prosthetic tips. These strangers became part of our healing. We also started telling our story more publicly. Megan wrote a blog post titled, "It was just a rash, until it wasn't." It went viral. Thousands of parents reached out, sharing how they'd ignored similar rashes, brushed off fevers, or hesitated to go to the ER. A few wrote back weeks later, saying, "Your story made me act sooner, and it saved my child." That made it all a little easier to bear. A little. As Ava's first birthday approached, we planned a small party, nothing extravagant, just close friends and family. We were nervous about how people would react when they saw her prosthetic. Would they pity her? Avoid asking questions? Would they pretend not to notice? But when the day arrived, none of that mattered. Ava was radiant, smiling, clapping, trying to eat frosting with her whole face. She pulled herself up beside the coffee table, one socked foot and one tiny prosthetic, and tried to walk. She took 2 wobbly steps before falling into my arms. We all cheered like she just won gold at the Olympics. And maybe, in her own way, she had. Later that night, after everyone left, Megan and I sat on the floor, surrounded by torn wrapping paper and cake crumbs. "She walked," I said. "She walked," Megan whispered, eyes shimmering. "Just like he said she would." We held Ava between us, her head resting against my chest, one hand gripping Megan's sleeve. The scar on her leg peeked out from beneath her pajama pants, but she was peaceful, safe. "I used to think the worst thing that could happen was something changing her forever," Megan said. "But now I see, it's not the change that matters. It's how we move forward from it." She was right. Ava will grow up with questions. One day she'll ask why her foot is different, why the old baby pictures show bandages and tubes. When that day comes, we'll tell her the truth, not just about what happened, but about who she became. A warrior. A miracle. A reminder that sometimes even the smallest symptom, a rash, a fever, can be the beginning of a fight for everything that matters. And if our story makes even one parent trust their gut and act fast, then maybe, just maybe, everything we went through can mean something more.